The most expensive tax you will ever pay is not collected by the IRS. It does not show up on your pay stub, and your accountant probably has no idea it even exists. I call it the I deserve it tax. It is a massive financial penalty levied against your net worth. But here is the catch. You are the one signing the check. We usually think of financial failure as a lack of knowledge or a lack of discipline. We assume that if we just read one more book on index funds, everything will click. But I've realized that most of our worst financial decisions do not happen in the prefrontal cortex where logic lives. They happen in the survival centers of the brain. When you are burnt out, exhausted, and feeling like a cog in a machine, your biology actually tricks you into sabotaging your future. Today, we are going to look at the neuroscience of why a bad week at work can cost you $300,000 in 30 years. Before we dive into the grey matter, let's set the stage. Think about the last time you had a truly soul-crushing week. Maybe your boss is a nightmare, or you have been staring at spreadsheets for 10 hours a day. On Friday night, you find yourself browsing for a luxury watch or a new car you do not need, thinking the phrase, "I deserve this." That is the I deserve it tax in action. It is a biological demand for relief that manifests as an irrational financial choice. If you want to stop paying this tax and actually keep the money you suffer for, hit that subscribe button. Consider it a high-yield investment in your own financial psychology. I try to make sure every minute you spend here pays dividends in your bank account later. Now, let's look at why your brain starts acting like your own worst enemy the moment you get stressed. To understand the I deserve it tax, we have to look at the biology of burnout. In 2019, the World Health Organization officially labelled burnout as an occupational phenomenon. But what is actually happening under the hood? When you deal with chronic workplace stress, your brain's amygdala, which is basically your internal fire alarm, is constantly ringing. This triggers the HPA axis, which stands for the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. This system floods your body with cortisol and adrenaline. In short bursts, this is great for finishing a report by midnight. But when it becomes chronic, cortisol becomes neurotoxic. It is like leaving your car's engine redlining for 3 weeks straight. Eventually, things start to break. And the first thing that breaks in a stressed out professional is the ability to think long term. Your brain stops being a wealth-building machine and starts being a survival machine. It is not interested in your retirement account. It is interested in making the pain stop right now. The physical reality of this is actually terrifying. Research from organizations like the APA shows that chronic stress literally shrinks the connections in your prefrontal cortex. I like to call the prefrontal cortex your wealth-building center. This is the part of your brain responsible for executive function, impulse control, and understanding compound interest. It is the logical adult in the room. When you are burnt out, that adult is basically tied up in the basement. Meanwhile, the more primitive parts of your brain, like the striatum and the amygdala, take the steering wheel. These parts of the brain do not understand that a $60,000 car loan will take 6 years to pay off. They only understand that the leather seats feel soft and the new car smell makes the bad feelings go away for 15 minutes. You are literally making financial decisions with a damaged brain architecture. This is why even smart, high-earning professionals can end up broke. Their biology has hijacked their balance sheet, and they are essentially shopping under the influence of cortisol. One of the key markers of burnout is cynicism. You start to feel a mental distance from your job. You feel like your work doesn't matter, and your time is being stolen from you. This creates a psychological vacuum that we try to fill with stuff. When you feel like you have no agency at work, you try to reclaim it through spending. This is where the term revenge spending comes from. It is a retaliation against a system that makes you feel small. You think, if I have to endure this terrible job, I am at least going to have the best kitchen appliances or a designer wardrobe. It is a way of proving to yourself that you are still in control. But it is an expensive illusion. Every time you spend money to spite your job, you are actually giving that job more power over you. You are trading your future freedom for a temporary feeling of defiance. The most dangerous part of this biological shift is how it messes with your perception of time. A healthy brain can look 20 years into the future and see the benefit of a diversified portfolio. A burnt-out brain has a time horizon of about 48 hours. This is called time discounting. When your survival brain is in charge, the future feels like a fantasy that might never happen. All that matters is the acute stress of today. This is why people who are otherwise brilliant with numbers will suddenly make an impulsive $5,000 purchase on a Tuesday night. They aren't being stupid, they are being biological. Their brain has decided that the long-term benefit of that money is less valuable than the immediate neurochemical relief of a purchase. To fix your finances, you have to first recognize that your brain is lying to you about what you actually need. You don't need a new gadget. You need a nervous system that isn't on fire. If you think the physical shrinking of your executive brain is bad, wait until you see what burnout does to your dopamine levels. Most people think dopamine is about pleasure, but that is a myth that is costing you a fortune every single year. In a moment, I'm going to explain why the Buy Now button on Amazon is actually acting like a syringe for your brain, and how that one chemical keeps you coming back for depreciating liabilities even when you know better. We have to look at the dopamine deficit hypothesis to understand why we seek rewards that actually make us poorer. If you have ever wondered why the thrill of a new purchase disappears the moment you open the box, the answer is hidden in the way your brain anticipates a reward. Let's get into the neuroscience of the dopamine trap. We need to clear something up about dopamine. Most people think it is the chemical of reward or joy. It isn't. Dopamine is the chemical of motivation and anticipation. It is the brain's way of saying, "Hey, pay attention, something potentially good is about to happen." When you are burnt out, your baseline dopamine levels are in the basement. The things that usually bring you joy, like a hobby or spending time with friends, require too much energy. Your brain is starving for a win, and it wants the path of least resistance. In the modern world, the easiest way to get a dopamine spike is frictionless consumerism. You don't have to train for a marathon or learn a new skill. You just have to tap a screen. The act of browsing and the act of clicking purchase releases a surge of dopamine that makes you feel alive again for a fleeting second. But notice I said the act of buying, not the act of owning. This is the cruel irony of the I deserve it tax. The neurochemical high peaks when you are waiting for the package to arrive. It is the anticipation that provides the relief. But once the item is actually in your hands, the dopamine levels crash back down to baseline, or often even lower. This is why you have boxes from online retailers sitting unopened in your hallway, or why that new tech gadget is gathering dust after 3 days. You didn't actually want the item. You wanted the dopamine hit that came with the transaction. This creates a psychological dependency, because the underlying problem, your job burnout, hasn't been solved. Your brain demands another fix. You are essentially self-medicating with retail therapy. Every time you pay the I deserve it tax, you are just buying another temporary dose of neurochemical normalcy. It is a cycle that keeps you broke and keeps the corporations rich, all because your brain is looking for a shortcut to feeling okay. There is also a social component to this revenge spending. As humans, we are social primates, and we are hardwired to care about our status within the tribe. Chronic stress at work often makes us feel undervalued and unappreciated. When your boss treats you like a line item, your serotonin levels drop, To compensate, you look for ways to signal status to the world. This is why we are drawn to visible, depreciating liabilities. An index fund is a fantastic asset, but you cannot wear it to a party, and you cannot park it in your driveway. You can't show it to the people who make you feel small. So, you buy the luxury car or the designer bag. It is a biological attempt to purchase respect and social standing. You are trying to use money to solve a feeling of inadequacy. The problem is that the people you are trying to impress are usually too busy worrying about their own status to even notice yours. You are sacrificing your financial freedom to buy a status signal that nobody is actually looking at. The marketing industry has become incredibly good at weaponizing the language of mental health. They have taken the concept of self-care and turned it into a reason to buy things. We are told that an expensive vacation, a luxury candle, or a high-end skincare routine is an act of self-love. But I have a different perspective. True self-care isn't a depreciating liability. True self-care is having an emergency fund so you don't have to stay at a toxic job. True self-care is having assets that generate income so you can reclaim your time. When we conflate consumerism with mental health, we are falling for a lie that keeps us on the treadmill. Every time you buy into the treat yourself narrative to cope with burnout, you are actually making it harder to escape the situation that is burning you out. We have to learn to distinguish between genuine relief and a marketing tactic designed to exploit our exhaustion. Now we are getting to the really dangerous part. If you don't break this cycle, you end up in a situation that finance people call the golden handcuffs. Most people think they will just earn their way out of stress. They think, if I get that next promotion, I will finally be happy. But what actually happens is that as your income rises, your stress rises, and your I deserve it tax increases right along with it. In a moment, I am going to show you the math of how a single luxury car payment can literally trap you in a job you hate for an extra decade. This is the mechanism that turns successful professionals into high-income prisoners. If you want to know how to spot the trap before it snaps shut, we need to talk about the math of depreciating liabilities and the prison of lifestyle creep. Behavioral economists have a term for this: the hedonic treadmill. It describes our tendency to return to a stable level of happiness regardless of what we buy or achieve. When you get that $60,000 BMW, it feels like a dream for the first month. By the third month, it is just your car. You have habituated to the luxury. The problem is that while your happiness has returned to its baseline, your financial obligation has stayed at $900 a month. This is the foundation of the I deserve it tax trap. You increase your cost of living to cope with stress, but the new stuff quickly stops providing relief. To get the same high, you have to buy something even bigger and even more expensive. Meanwhile, you have to keep working that high-stress job just to maintain the baseline you have already built. You have essentially outsourced your happiness to your creditors, and they are charging a very high interest rate. Let me tell you about a guy I knew named David. David was a high-performing attorney making $300,000 a year, but he was absolutely miserable. To cope with the 80-hour weeks, he justified a massive lifestyle. He had the $5,000 a month penthouse and the high-end watch collection. He told himself he deserved these things because of how hard he worked. But here is what happened when he finally hit a wall and wanted to quit. He looked at his bills and realized he couldn't leave. His depreciating liabilities had formed a set of golden handcuffs. He was legally and financially bound to the very job that was destroying his health, because he had spent all his ammunition on things that were losing value. He was a wealthy man on paper, but he had zero freedom. This is the ultimate goal of the I deserve it tax. It doesn't just take your money, it takes your options. It ensures that you are too broke to ever tell your boss no. David's story is a warning that a high income is not the same thing as wealth. Another reason we fall into this trap is ego depletion. Research suggests that willpower is a finite resource. Every decision you make at work, from what to say in a meeting to how to phrase an email, drains your mental battery. By the time you get home at 7 p.m., your prefrontal cortex is completely exhausted. This is when you are most vulnerable. When a targeted ad for a new pair of shoes or a piece of tech pops up on your feed, you don't have the energy to mount a logical defense. The friction required to say no is too high. This is why financial success is rarely about willpower. It is about systems. If you rely on your brain to make good choices when you are tired, you are going to lose every single time. The modern economy is specifically designed to catch you when you are depleted. It waits for that moment of weakness to sell you a depreciating liability under the guise of a reward. We also suffer from something called mental accounting. This is a concept developed by Richard Thaler. We treat money differently depending on where it came from or how we feel about it. When you feel like you have suffered for your paycheck, you unconsciously put that money into a survival or entertainment bucket. You don't see it as a neutral tool for building wealth. You see it as a trophy that must be redeemed for a prize. This emotional attachment to the money makes you more likely to spend it irrationally. You feel that because you earned it through pain, you should spend it on pleasure. But the math doesn't care about your feelings. $1 invested while you are happy grows at the same rate as $1 invested while you are miserable. The trick is learning to see your income as a tool for your future self, not just a bandage for your current self. So how do we fix this? You cannot willpower your way out of biological exhaustion, so you have to build guardrails. The first and most effective strategy is the 48-hour dopamine delay rule. Here is how it works. For any non-essential purchase over $100, you must wait 2 full days before hitting buy. This is a neuroscientific hack. You still get the dopamine spike of browsing and adding the item to your cart. You have satisfied the immediate craving for the hit. But by closing the browser and walking away, you allow the acute emotional surge to subside. You give your prefrontal cortex time to come back online and evaluate the purchase logically. I have found that about 80% of the things I think I need on a stressful Tuesday night look completely ridiculous by Thursday morning. This rule alone can save you thousands of dollars a year. It isn't about saying no. It is about saying not right now. It is a way of letting the biological storm pass before you make a permanent financial decision. The next step is to reframe what a reward actually is. The "I deserve it" narrative is very strong, and you shouldn't try to silence it. Instead, redirect it. You do deserve to be rewarded for your hard work, but you need to redefine the prize. Instead of rewarding yourself with a depreciating liability that keeps you trapped, reward yourself with freedom. When you feel the urge to spend $300 on something you don't need, log into your brokerage account and buy $300 of an index fund instead. Look at the share count and say to yourself, I am buying my future time. I am buying my escape route from this job. I am buying my autonomy. You have to train your brain to get a dopamine hit from accumulating assets rather than acquiring liabilities. It takes time, but eventually, watching your net worth grow becomes more satisfying than any luxury purchase could ever be. You are still treating yourself. You are just treating your future self instead of a corporate shareholder. If decision fatigue is the enemy, then automation is your greatest ally. You need to make your wealth-building decisions at a time when you are rested and clear-headed. Set up your 401k, your Roth IRA, and your brokerage transfers to happen automatically the moment your paycheck hits. The goal is to make sure the money for your future never even touches your checking account. By the time you are sitting on the couch on a Friday night, exhausted and looking for something to buy, the money for your freedom is already gone. It is safely tucked away in your investment accounts. This artificially restricts the amount of capital available for the "I deserve it" tax. It is much harder to overspend when the money isn't there to begin with. You are essentially bypassing your own depleted brain and letting a system handle the heavy lifting of building your wealth. Let's run the hard numbers on the opportunity cost of revenge spending. Imagine burnout convinces you that you deserve a new luxury car with a $900 monthly payment. Over 5 years, that car will cost you $54,000 in payments alone, and at the end, it will be worth a fraction of that. But what happens if you invest that $900 a month into a diversified index fund instead? At an 8% return, after 5 years, you would have roughly $66,000. If you then just left that money alone to grow for another 20 years, it would balloon to over $300,000. When you look at that car, you shouldn't see leather seats and a logo. You should see a $300,000 hole in your retirement. When you realize that your treat is actually an act of financial self-sabotage, it loses its appeal very quickly. The "I deserve it" tax is literally the difference between retiring in your 50s or working until you are 70. Once you see the math, the luxury item doesn't look like a reward anymore. It looks like a prison sentence. Your logical brain is finally back in charge. At the end of the day, financial independence is not just about having a high net worth. It is about having agency over your time and your biology. The "I deserve it" tax is a symptom of a life that is out of balance. If you want to dive deeper into these strategies and join a community of people who are hacking their way to freedom, consider clicking the join button below to become one of the optimizers. Our members get custom sketch badges and priority replies on comments, but more importantly, they are committed to peer reviewing their financial habits and sharing data. We are building a culture where we value assets over status. The road to wealth is paved with the things you did not buy. Stop paying the "I deserve it" tax to corporations and start paying it to yourself. You are not a consumer, you are an investor. You are not a victim of your biology, you are the architect of your future. I would love to hear in the comments about a time you almost paid the "I deserve it" tax and how you stopped yourself. Let's start the peer review below.